All right, I am back. And you know, I'm gonna play with this light just a little bit. I guess that's fine. It's just I've been cooking for a while, so there we go. I like that. Okay, so baked cakes. Here's the yellow cake with the sour cream, the cremello flavor, the room temperature eggs, and the additional teaspoon of baking powder. You cannot get this height on a cake, a double cake mix at that, without adding a little fresh baking powder. Check it out. This is the chocolate one. Fills up the whole pan. You can't even do this if you did one box cake. You still need to add a half teaspoon of baking powder to the mix so that you can get this height, so it doesn't deflate in the middle and things like that. So what I'm gonna do now is store it. So I got some gloves. I probably need to move this back some. Let's see, so that you can see what I'm doing. All right, I got some plastic wrap. I got some wax paper. Don't I have some? Oh yes, I do. I have wax paper right here. So I'm gonna store this because I'm going to ice it either tomorrow or Saturday morning. The event is Saturday night, so I would plot my next move after this. So this is completely cooled. You see it's on a cooling rack that I bought for $3 at Dollar General. You have to have these little tools in order to make your project successful. I've already measured it, so lengthwise it's 15 3/4. So halfway I measured to 7, just a little more than 7.5, so that I can cut it down the middle. Because in the cake pan, so it's gonna be 2 layers, and inside the cake pan will be, well, it won't be served in the cake pan, but on the box it will be half chocolate, half vanilla. So I'm going to cut this in half. And if you make a clean cut and you keep it clean, if you need to revise your plan and fit it maybe into one cake again, you can just ice it in the middle and push it back together. So no harm, no foul there. But for storage purposes, since I'm working with limited space, this is better. So I'm gonna cut it in half, straight down the middle. And how I'm going to proceed is I'm going to lay out some plastic wrap. Oh, and by the way, hit the like button on this video. And if you have baking questions, cooking questions, I have lots of hacks. I have been a culinarian for more than 20 years, and I can make my way around the kitchen. So plastic wrap. I'm going to lay down some wax paper because I don't want anything, I don't want it to sweat, I don't want it to stick, I don't want it to do anything crazy like that. So I'm going to actually store it this side down. And look how nice and flat the top is. A lot of times when you bake a cake, any cake, whether it's box cake or one you made from scratch, you get that mound at the top, that bubble at the top, and you have to cut that off in order to make it flat so that your icing lays flat. But this, the way that I prepared this, it is beautiful. Now I still have some slope on my corners, but I can build that up with the icing. You know, when I put the icing on, I would just come across that way and build the rest up with just a little more icing. So I'm gonna put that down. That's half. I am going to put another piece on top, but I believe I'm gonna add some powdered sugar in between there so that, again, it doesn't get sticky. Now this bottom one is not gonna get sticky on the wax paper because remember I have the flour and oil stuff at the bottom, so that's not gonna stick, but I'm concerned about the top. So I'm gonna just do a little powdered sugar before I put the wax paper on top. And that's fine because remember I'm gonna cover this with icing, of which I'm gonna make from scratch. Now, the other thing I want you to notice, look at how beautiful that cake is. Look how nice and even it is. It's not crumbly, it's not falling apart, it springs back. That's a good cake that came out beautiful. And remember, part of that height is from room temperature eggs. Room temperature eggs, the other part of that height is from the extra baking powder because I did add sour cream, I used whole milk, and those things have so much more water, add more liquid to the batter. So adding those things, and you know, if you didn't do baking powder is cost effective, but if you didn't do baking powder, you could actually add, so I did 3 eggs per cake mix. You could add 2 egg yolks per cake mix in order to get height also. And you'll still get dense, but by adding those additional egg yolks, you might get a little closer to pound cake than the fluffy cake that we're dealing with here. But it depends on what you have on hand, because if you don't have baking powder and you have more eggs, use egg yolks. If you are being cost effective and you have a can of baking powder in there, which is $1, use baking powder. So powdered sugar on there, more wax paper. I'm gonna dust it with just a touch. Where did I put? Oh. You wouldn't believe I've been doing this all day. Where did I put it? So that's just a little bit of powdered sugar. Then I'm gonna stack that on top. Move that there. Now this cake is completely cooled. You can store a warm cake, but you know, you want to just keep everything nice and sexy and cool it completely so that you can handle it. You know, when a cake is still warm, it's all sensitive and, you know, wants to act all like it wants to fall apart or something. So that is the initial wrap. I'm gonna move it over so that I can do it again. Then I'm gonna show you how I cool my cake. So I start off cooling it. As you can see, it's sitting on the eyes on the stove, and that elevates it some. If you cool a cake flat on the counter, it is going to be moist at the bottom, and that's not a good kind of moist, you know. It's gonna be all soggy is the word that I was looking for. Soggy at the bottom, and you don't want that. I'm gonna do this, wrap it this way. And then I'm gonna do that. And from here, I'm gonna wrap it again. Just to keep all of the air out, because the event is actually on Saturday. Today is Thursday, So I do not want it to be stale. But at the same time, who is gonna cook all of this for 20 people the day of and not lose their mind? So I'm gonna wrap it that way. I'm gonna flip it, and I'm gonna wrap it like just like that. What I will probably wind up doing is going to the store. I have gallon bags, but I'm sure if I go to a specialty store that I can get bigger bags, and I'll store this. Oh, I was gonna do foil. I was gonna wrap this all in foil, and then I'm gonna keep that nice and tight and put it here. Now, what I did extra with the chocolate cake, I didn't do the cremello in it. What I used was this, this is one of these things that I bought and thought I knew I'd use it, I just didn't know when. So that's espresso and cocoa infused sea salt. So what I did was I added 3/4 of a tablespoon of espresso cocoa infused sea salt to the batter. So these are those flavors and things that when people eat them, they don't immediately say, oh, this is a box cake. No, they're gonna say that's amazing. I also used the sour cream, I used milk, I used room temperature eggs, and I did all that, and the teaspoon of baking powder, and that's how I got this beauty here. Now this is still hot, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cool it completely, and the only way you can do that, I mean, you can do it in the pan, but if you do it in the pan, you're gonna ice it in the pan. And if you were gonna ice this in the pan, you still wanna take that top layer off, because when you start putting icing on it, it'll start kind of coming up, you know, whereas by doing it in layer fashion, the two tops will go together. So it doesn't matter if the icing comes up or not. So that goes face down, that goes like that. Sometimes it's a little stubborn, be careful with it. Treat it nice and gently. Beautiful. So again, I have a nice flat base here, nice rounded edges. It looks amazing. So all I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna let this cool also. And when it is cooled completely is when I'll do the plastic wrap, the wax paper, and I'll also do aluminum foil around it. And that'll protect it until I decorate it. And what I'm gonna show you after this, you just put it on a counter out of the way. This is my busy counter here, so I'm gonna actually move it over here. So I have my first cake, and this is how high it's gonna be when I get the icing on it too. So that's gonna be a nice sized cake. They're gonna be, wow, that's beautiful. It is. So I'm gonna just move this over here to cool on the counter. So what I'm gonna do, the next video will be buttercream frosting. If you wanna make your own buttercream frosting, that's great. You need a KitchenAid. It is not highly advised to make a buttercream frosting with a hand mixer. Now you can probably get away with, if you wanted to, you could use canned frosting, but here's the tip for the canned frosting. You want to do what's called a crumb coat. And you want to take the canned frosting, you want to put a thin layer all over the cake and everything. You want to fill it. First you want to fill it, and then you want to put a thin coat all over and scrape all those crumbs and fuse them down with the icing, put it in the refrigerator and let that set. And then you can follow it with more canned frosting over that, and that'll give you a clean appearance. You might save money that way, maybe, maybe not. Depends on what kind of time you have. Because Crisco will run you for a can, a full can, might run you about $4 or $5. Then you might also, you'll need probably 2 pounds of powdered sugar. Now you won't use that whole can of frosting, or whole can of Crisco, you'll use like half. So for every cup, you're gonna use 4 cups of powdered sugar for that. You thin it down a little bit and you add your own flavor. So making it yourself, it's a little more fresh and you can add your own flavor and spin to it. But if time is a factor or equipment is a factor, then you just wanna go ahead and buy the can, put your crumb coat on, make sure that's good and set before you proceed to step 2. And you can take the icing out of the can and you can color it and pipe it and do everything else that you're gonna do. Just be aware that it's gonna tend to be a little more soft. So I wouldn't get into very intricate or large flowers and decorations using that canned frosting because it's a little soft. So that is my baked cake hacks that I just showed you. In the next video, I will show you my icing, whether I use can or make it myself is yet to be determined. But either way, I'm still gonna walk you through the crumb coat, the filling, and I'll show you my finished product. So thanks again. Hit like, share the video, subscribe, watch it over and over again. Leave comments. If you have questions about how to make this or that, please contact me, because Smoothology's premise is based on overall wellness, healthy eating, which includes enjoying things like cake from time to time. You just can't eat the whole cake, and you can't eat this every day. But when there's a time and an opportunity for that, enjoy it. However, if you're making cake for your family and it's just a small affair, hit me up in the comments and I can give you some baking hacks to take some of the fat out. Probably not going to affect the sugar content, but the amount of fat that you put in it can definitely be impacted, and I can walk you through it. Or even if you want, I'll make another video using the applesauce, and things like that, and using chemical leavening to bring it up, and I can walk you through all of that. So this is fun for me. Hope it's great for you. Leave comments, like, share, subscribe, watch the video to the end, and I'll be back. Thanks.